going to make, for a starter, a potato gnocchi with some tomato petals, some shaved Parmesan cheese and some rocket. For a main course, we'll make a pan-fried chicken breast with a beetroot relish, roast parsnip batons, we'll do some new potatoes as well. And for a pudding, we'll make a chocolate fondant, which is a hot chocolate dessert, completely gluten-free, with a pear sauce and some whipped cream. So I think I'll just bash on. I have to start first off with the gnocchi recipe. The gnocchi recipe is a ratio recipe that uses approximately 2 parts of potato to 1 part of flour. For every 2 potatoes, you use 1 whole egg and 1 yolk. We then need to work it into a dough that's similar to a scone recipe, but I need to cook some potatoes. So we'll start with our tray and some large baking potatoes. We'll use 3. Drizzle a little bit of oil on the potatoes. Sprinkle some salt on them, and then we'll fire them into the oven. So we'll put those potatoes into the oven at 200 degrees centigrade for about an hour, the same as you would if you're baking a potato. 120 grams of dark chocolate, 60 grams of milk chocolate, and to that we'll add 75 grams of butter. This will be the recipe for the base for the fondant. We'll then put the chocolate and the butter together in a microwavable safe bowl and set them to one side. We'll then make the stuff ready for the ganache. So for that we'll need 100 grams of milk chocolate and 50 ml of double cream. We'll say 3 tablespoons. And a tea. Now I'm going to line the molds for the chocolate fondant. I'm going to use some small molds and line them with a greaseproof paper and thoroughly grease them. So to do that I'll need to have some melted butter and some greaseproof paper. We'll cut some paper into basic squares and then cut them into circles. We'll do that by folding them in half. And then in quarters. And then into triangles. And then cutting them so when we open them up, they'll resemble round discs. Now you want to make sure the circles are a bit bigger than you need them. And brush each of the circles with softened butter. Now this will stop the chocolate pudding from sticking. In addition to the greased paper, we also need to make sure we grease the insides of the molds. This is so the paper doesn't stick to the molds and so that we can lift out the desserts easily. So again, softened butter, a pastry brush, and you simply just brush the molds on the insides, up the sides, and on the bottom. Onto the paper, you need to put a small amount of corn flour. So I have in this bag here. Grab a small amount on your fingers, and then holding your hand this sort of style, just shake it above the paper. If you then tap the underside of the paper, you'll make the coating thorough. You press the inside. You should theoretically end up something like that. I like to work when I cook. I like to prepare all the ingredients that I'm going to do. I'd like to do all my cutting first. So I'm just going to get some ingredients together and I'll prepare them. Once they're prepared, I'll start cooking. The idea behind this is, especially for the show, is that I can explain what I'm doing, you can see how I'm cutting, and hopefully if you can notice, you can pick up some knife skills and then we can get you picking up some cooking skills. I'll just use some small plates. I found that if we've got all our ingredients together, you sort of know what you're working with before you start. I'll prepare the vegetables first, follow that up with the dairy products, and then later on I'll work the fridge. This is just to prevent any cross-contamination. It's quite important these days. Don't want anyone getting sick, of course. So we'll be using a Savoy cabbage. We simply place one piece on top of another until we have a stack maybe of 4 or 5 pieces. There's a central spine that runs down the middle of the thing. You need to cut around that. So if you cut a straight line, then you make a cut about 1/2 centimetre wide in the cabbage, and then you just cut through it. If you stack it up, it means that you only have to cut 2 or 3 times, because you're cutting more at once rather than cutting lots of pieces at the same time. Once you've completed that, obviously put it to one side, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Okay, so I'll just peel this onion. To do that, you just start with the top, work your fingers into the skin, and just peel it down. Now, if it looks a bit manky, as you can see, that's just a little bit nasty. Just take the next layer down. It's onion after all, it costs you a few pennies. So with this onion, we're going to use half of it for the sauce and half of it for the beetroot relish. With the half for the sauce, we need to cut it quite coarsely. We'll cut it into centimetre sized pieces. So cut in 4 cuts along the onion and then 4 cuts back across, and you'll end up with your small pieces. Then with your other half of the onion, you want to make parallel cuts quite close together, as close as you can comfortably do it. Making parallel cuts across the onion, with the head at one end and the tail at the other. The idea being that you don't cut all the way through the onion, you just cut about 3/4 of the way down. And then you simply slice down across the cuts, so you're making a cross cut. You can see that this is all sort of cut through. And you'll end up with something that is a reasonably small dice. And then once this is cut, we'll put it to one side and we'll prepare the garlic, which we need for the sauce and for the beetroot relish. With the garlic, take it in the heel of your hand, push it forward hard, get it in your fingers and rock it back and forward until you hear a large crack. The crack means that the garlic skin has loosened off the bulb and it will peel easily. With half of the garlic, we'll need to cut 3 cloves of it for the chicken sauce, and the rest of it we're going to crush and chop fairly coarsely for the beetroot relish. My knife's a bit blunt. It's a straight edge knife, and there's a trick in the trade to sharpen one up at home if you don't have one of these steels or a stone. You take an enamel piece of pottery, and you'll see at the bottom it's unglazed. The rest of this has this beautiful glaze on it and has a solid bit of ring where you can see the ceramic. You simply put this flat and run your knife at a 45-degree angle across the top of the stone. Back, one angle, and then the reverse on the other side. About 45 degrees. Do it 6 or 7 times. This will give you a basically sharper knife. So now we're going to cut these tomatoes in quarters. Cut them in half and quarters and remove the seeds. Do that by sitting it on the skin side surface, hold your knife flat and literally just sort of rock your tomato, pushing the knife through it. That should remove the seeds and we'll just take them off. And these, I hope you're filming with that, Jack, are called tomato petals, just as we refer.